Commander Zeth'kar of the Vaelian Empire adjusted his ceremonial sash as the transport shuttle descended toward Earth's atmosphere. The diplomatic mission seemed straightforward enough. A routine inspection of humanity's premier military academy as part of the newly signed Galactic peace accords. The humans had been surprisingly eager to accommodate the visit, almost enthusiastically so. This should have been Zeth'kar's first warning. The Vaelian commander had conquered 17 star systems and subjugated dozens of species during his illustrious career. He had witnessed the collapse of the silicon-based Korthak civilization and overseen the pacification of the warrior monks of Zerion Prime. Nothing in the galaxy could possibly surprise him anymore, or so he believed. The Earth Military Academy sprawled across several square kilometers of pristine landscape, its gleaming structures a testament to human architectural prowess. As Zeth'kar's shuttle touched down on the landing pad, he was greeted by a delegation of human officers led by General Patricia Morrison, a stern-faced woman whose gray hair was pulled back in a regulation bun. "Welcome to Earth, Commander Zeth'kar," General Morrison said, extending her hand in the curious human gesture of greeting. "We're honored to have such a distinguished member of the Vaelian Empire visit our humble academy." Zeth'kar clasped the general's hand briefly, noting the surprising firmness of her grip. "The honor is mine, General. The Vaelian High Command is most interested in observing your training methodologies." The tour began innocuously enough. General Morrison led Zeth'kar through the administrative buildings, showcasing the Academy's history and achievements. The walls were lined with portraits of distinguished graduates, their faces bearing the calm confidence that Zeth'kar recognized in seasoned warriors across the galaxy. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary by galactic military standards. "Our cadets undergo a 4-year program," General Morrison explained as they walked through the main academic building. "We emphasize not just tactical and strategic thinking, but also ethics, diplomacy, and cultural understanding." Zeth'kar nodded approvingly. The Vaelian military academies followed similar principles, though with perhaps less emphasis on diplomacy and more on conquest efficiency. Our stop was a classroom where cadets were engaged in what appeared to be a standard tactical simulation. The instructor, a colonel with battle scars across his left temple, was explaining a complex multi-front engagement scenario. The students, young humans barely out of their adolescence, followed along intently, occasionally raising their hands to ask probing questions about logistics, casualty minimization, and civilian evacuation protocols. "Impressive," Zeth'kar murmured to General Morrison. "Your cadets show remarkable strategic acumen for their age." "Oh, this is just basic tactical theory," the general replied casually. "Wait until you see our advanced courses." The next stop was the physical training facility. Zeth'kar expected to see the usual military exercises, combat drills, weapons training, endurance challenges. What he witnessed instead made his secondary heart skip a beat. Cadets, some appearing barely 16 Earth years old, were scaling vertical walls that would challenge experienced Vaelian shock troopers. Others were completing obstacle courses that incorporated live ammunition exercises, leaping through fields of actual plasma fire with casual precision. One group was engaged in hand-to-hand combat training that would have been considered torture in most civilized species military programs. "This seems intensive," Zeth'kar observed, watching a young female cadet execute a combat maneuver that involved disarming an opponent while simultaneously calculating trajectory angles for a grenade throw. "Standard PT," General Morrison replied cheerfully. "We believe in preparing our officers for any eventuality." But it was the next demonstration that truly shook Zeth'kar's confidence in his understanding of human nature. The Academy's survival training course was, according to General Morrison, just a little field exercise we used to build character. The course began with cadets being dropped into a simulated hostile environment, a recreation of a Class 7 death world, complete with atmospheric toxins, predatory fauna, and extreme weather conditions. Zeth'kar watched in growing horror as human teenagers not only survived these conditions, but actually seemed to thrive in them. The record for this course is held by Cadet Johnson. General Morrison mentioned casually, pointing to a young man who was currently fashioning explosive devices, from common plant materials while fending off attacks from robotic predators designed to mimic the most dangerous creatures in known space. He completed it in 36 hours. Most species' elite special forces require at least a week. Most species would require medical evacuation, Zeth'kar muttered under his breath. The Psychological Evaluation Center was where Zeth'kar's worldview truly began to crumble. Human cadets were being subjected to mental stress tests that would break the minds of seasoned Vaelian veterans. They faced simulated scenarios involving impossible choices, moral dilemmas with no correct answers, and psychological pressure that would have reduced most galactic species to catatonic states. "We need our officers to be prepared for the worst-case scenarios," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, the Academy's chief psychologist. "War is hell, as we humans say, and our leaders need to be able to function even when everything goes wrong." What terrified Zeth'kar most was not the intensity of the training, but the casual way the humans approached it. These weren't elite special forces operatives or hardened veterans. These were children, barely adults, treating exercises that would challenge the galaxy's most feared warriors as routine homework assignments. "Tell me, General," Zeth'kar said during lunch, trying to keep his voice steady, "what do you consider advanced training?" General Morrison smiled, the expression that Zeth'kar was beginning to find deeply unsettling. "Well, Commander, that would be our special warfare program. Unfortunately, that's classified above your current clearance level. But I can tell you that it involves training in environments that, well, let's just say they're not technically legal under several galactic conventions." That afternoon, Zeth'kar observed a war games exercise that redefined his understanding of military capability. Human cadets, organized into opposing forces, were conducting a planetary assault simulation that incorporated orbital mechanics, multidimensional thinking, and tactical innovations that Zeth'kar had never encountered in 3 decades of military service. "How do they process information so quickly?" he asked, watching a group of cadets coordinate a complex flanking maneuver while simultaneously managing supply lines and civilian evacuation protocols. "Oh, that's just natural human multitasking ability," General Morrison replied. "We're persistence hunters by evolution. Our brains are wired for complex problem-solving under extreme stress." As the day concluded, Zeth'kar found himself in the Academy's Memorial Hall, surrounded by monuments to fallen graduates. The sheer number was staggering, but what disturbed him more was the diversity of conflicts represented. Humans had been fighting wars across dozens of star systems, against enemies he'd never even heard of. "General Morrison," he said slowly, "exactly how many active conflicts is humanity currently engaged in?" The general paused, seeming to count on her fingers. "Active combat operations? I'd say about 47 at last count. But most of those are just minor peacekeeping actions or anti-piracy operations." Zeth'kar's blood ran cold. The mighty Vaelian Empire, with all its military might, was currently engaged in perhaps 6 significant conflicts across their vast territory. Humanity, a species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century, was simultaneously fighting nearly 50 wars and treating it as routine business. The flight back to Vaelian space was the longest of Zeth'kar's life. His report to the High Command would be brief, but earth-shattering. Humanity was not just another species to be catalogued and potentially conquered. They were something entirely unprecedented in galactic history. A race of natural-born warriors who had weaponized their own children's education and turned military training into a casual academic exercise. The Vaelian High Command issued a classified directive that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Under no circumstances should the Vaelian Empire ever, under any conditions, engage in hostile action against the human species. The memo was brief, consisting of only 3 words repeated 17 times. "They're all soldiers." Commander Zeth'kar retired from active duty shortly thereafter, taking up a quiet position in the diplomatic corps. He never spoke publicly about his visit to Earth, but those close to him noticed that he would sometimes wake in the night, muttering about young humans who treated death worlds as playgrounds and turned warfare into homework assignments. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, their numbers, or their strategic brilliance. It was something far more terrifying. The casual, almost cheerful way they had turned the art of war into a basic life skill, taught to their children alongside mathematics and literature. The galaxy would never be the same.